This man kidnaps young children and eats them alive. Isn't that disgusting? Well, find out the full story in this recap and tell me what you think in the comments. The film opens and we see a boy whose grandma tells him he needs to behave, or something called the Cucuy will get him. It is the Boogeyman from Mexican folklore who kidnaps misbehaving children and brings them to a cave to eat them. Then the mother comes in and she leaves to take the grandma home, leaving the boy alone. As he lays frightened, his brother Javi pranks him by jumping out of the closet. Jabby watches the film back and laughs, but suddenly he hears footsteps on his roof. He looks out the window and sees somebody, and there's banging on the door. Javi goes to investigate, and a shadowy figure appears behind him, and they hide under a bed. Suddenly, Jabby is dragged away and disappears. We flash to the present and see a missing poster with Javi on it. We then see our protagonist, Sophia, who beats up some kids who were bullying her little sister, Amelia. She is arrested and taken to court, where she is sentenced only to house arrest, because she is dealing with her father's death as they drive home. Sophia's mom talks about her financial struggles, and we see a family grieving the death of another young girl who died, as Sophia spends her time at home. She investigates her new neighbor, who she thinks seems very creepy one day. She watches home and sees him with some suspicious-looking chains. Later, Sophia discovers that some students are still bullying her sister online. We see one of the girls responsible, and she is home alone. Her name is Sierra, and she goes to take a selfie, but notices there is someone behind her. She runs and calls the police, but it is too late and she is cornered by the ominous Boogeyman, who puts a sack over her head. Sophia wakes the next day and finds police outside Sierra's house and notices her neighbor watching the scene on the news. The girl's mom pleads for her to be returned, and a 7 p.m. curfew is installed now that 2 kids are missing. Sophia realizes that Sierra was the one bullying Amelia online, and Amelia says something bad must be going on in the town. Sophia continues to spy on her neighbor and notices him bringing food to his basement. She thinks he might be keeping someone locked up. A boy she likes named Milo visits, and she tells him about her suspicions a bit later. She looks through the fence and sees the Boogeyman watching her, but seconds later it is gone that night. The curfew is in place, but some bullies ignore it and vandalize a local school inside. A ball suddenly rolls away, seemingly on its own. It rolls into a basement, and one of the boys goes to investigate. The light suddenly flash out, and the Boogeyman appears right beside him. He tries to run away, but freezes in fear as the figure walks up to him and says, "Mala," which means bat in Spanish. The boy slips and falls, and he is pulled into the sack of the Boogeyman. Later that night, Sophia has a nightmare where Sierra tells her he is coming for her the next morning. The police hold a press conference where they announce the boy named Travis has disappeared last night. The parents are outraged and think it may be a serial killer. The room is tense, but someone makes a joke about the Kukui who steals children and eats them. They disregard the comment. Then we see the creepy neighbor standing towards the back. Later that day, Sophia watches the neighbor leave rapidly. Amelia breaks into the house to look around because Sophia can't due to her house arrest inside. She finds a door with a large lock, and her hearing aids malfunctioned, so she takes them off back at the house. Sophia and Milo begin to argue, so no one notices when the neighbor arrives back home. Amelia hides as he enters, but he unlocks the basement, so she goes down. She finds loads of research from the missing cases and sees a journal full of information about the Kukui Boogeyman. As she flips through the papers, the man comes down the stairs, so Sophia knocks on the door to distract him. But when Amelia escapes through a window, a bell is rung, and she barely makes it out before being discovered in the safety of their home. Amelia reveals some photos of what she saw. There was a map of the town and photos of all the missing kids, including articles about them. Sophie then sees a photo of the Kukui and realizes it is the same creature she saw outside. She explains to Milo that it is like the Boogeyman and snatches children who misbehave. Sophia then states all the missing kids were bullies, and maybe the Kukui is real. But Milo thinks she is crazy. That night it rains, so Sophia retrieves the laundry from outside. When she looks up, she sees the same creature on her roof with a large sack. Once again, it disappears in a second, and she races inside. Meanwhile, Amelia is reading about the Mexican Boogeyman when she hears footsteps on her roof. Sophia runs to her room, but the door is somehow slammed shut and won't move. Amelia tries to get out, then turns and sees a hand grab her bed frame. She hides inside her closet and sees the Boogeyman walking through her room. She tries to escape, but the Boogeyman gets her. Sophia manages to get inside and sees the Boogeyman and holding Amelia by the foot, and she begs it to take her instead. The Boogerman only replies saying Mala when it throws Sophia to the ground when she gets up. The two have disappeared and she hears screaming in the distance. The police arrive later and Sophia's mom asks her what happened. Sophia cries and says it was the Kukui, but the policeman clearly doesn't believe. But when Sophia says it had red eyes, the policeman becomes worried because the surviving boys from the school said the same exact. He then asks Sophia if anyone would want to harm Amelia, and she eventually reveals the photos from her neighbor's house. Later, the police break into his home and arrest him after discovering the scene in his basement. Sophia's mom questions the man in the police car, and he says the Kukui is very real, and it took his brother when he was young. He says he saw him with his own eyes, but no one believed him. That is why he has been tracking it from town to town and investigating the cases. Finally, he says to save Amelia, they need to find the Kukui's cave before it's too late in the jail. The man takes off his shirt and reveals he has a Kukui tattoo. He is hiding under his bed and says, even if he is silenced someday, it will lose the boogeyman, then reaches out and grabs him. The next day, the officer says nothing, links the man to any of the cases when he checks on his cell. He discovers the man has been brutally strangled in his death the next day. Sophia and her mom talk, and she reveals the man said they need to find the cave. We then see Amelia, who wakes up in that very cave. She walks around and finds the Kukui eating what appears to be one of the missing children. She trips and falls, and discovers she is surrounded by children who are wrapped up in some sort of webbing. Amelia backs up but runs into the monster and screams as it reaches for her. Meanwhile, Sophia is at home, and she looks through photos from the neighbor's home. Eventually, she calls Milo and says she thinks the cave might be in the sack, so they need to find the Kukui. Sophia then realizes that all the missing children may be connected through social media. Her and Milo research and see all of the kids taken had viewed a girl's Facebook post before she committed suicide. Milo removes her ankle monitor and they drive into town. They talk to the girl's parents and Sophia accuses them of summoning the Kukui. Finally, the mom breaks down and says all the children watched the original video and did nothing to help her daughter. Because of this, she summoned the Kukui to take all of them, but she did not want them to die. One of the policemen sees Sophia leaving and calls her mother, who checks her room and sees she is missing. The duo breaks into an abandoned church and they turn on the original video of the girl. They hold hands as they watch, because this means the Kukui will now be coming after them as soon as it finishes. The candles go out, and the monster is seen entering the building. It appears behind Sophia, but Milo comes up from behind and tries to hit it with a bat. Now distracted, Sophia manages to steal his sack and she dives inside it. It opens up as she crawls through and she reaches the cave at the other side. She ventures through it and finds numerous children wrapped up in some webbing. Sophia finds Amelia, and she is unresponsive, so she tears off the webbing once it is removed. Amelia regains consciousness, and they talk through sign language to not be heard. She says the other children are not dead, but they are stored in the webs before being eaten. Just then, the Boogerman arrives and screams at them in rage. The two sprint away and find a rope which Amelia climbs while Sophia leads the Kukui away. She hides as it looks for her inches away, then attacks it. In the two struggle, Sophia is thrown to the ground and some vines from the cave tie her up. She begins to be strangled, but Sophia's mom and Milo arrive and buy her some time. She is freed from the vines and successfully stabs it in the chest, saying, "This is for Amelia." Some goo pours out of the cockroy's mouth, and its spirits begin to float in the air as glowing blue balls. The tied-up children are all freed, and the group quickly flee as the cave begins to shake violently. Sophia is the last to escape with the rope, and as she leaves, the cave opens and more Kukui is responded in the distance. The police arrive on scene and the families are reunited with their missing children. Sophia embraces her mother and Amelia, and the movie comes to a close.